slow down the snoring a little bit here.
It's not me, it's her.
I believe me, I know. Wakeful snoring is not in your skill set.
No.
No.
I'm working on it.
You don't need to. We're good. Transgender Studies Quarterly is described as, here's just the first sentence in about the journal. Over the past 2 decades, transgender studies has become fertile ground for new approaches to cultural analysis. Second sentence. TSQ, Transgender Studies Quarterly, offers a high-profile venue for innovative research and scholarship that can test the objectification, pathologization, and exoticization of transgender lives. Okay, so what do they publish? Well, one of their first pieces that they published in their very first issue is titled Trans Species, and it has the following quote. Not yet. More recently, Ernst Mayr's well-known 1942 biological definition of species as, quote, actually or potentially interbreeding natural populations, which are reproductively isolated from other such groups, end quote, while contested, helped solidify heterosexuality's starring role in species debates. There are a lot of species concepts out there. For those of us who have actually thought carefully about what a species is and isn't, and whether or not it is a necessary conceit or an actual thing, and reasonable people can disagree about the answers to these questions, and for those of us who have actually also considered many species concepts, including which ones work best for extinct species versus extant species, asexual species versus sexually reproducing species, plants versus animals, all the things, okay? Yes, Ernst Mayr, who in 1942 proposed what is the most commonly known and most commonly used species concept for those trying to figure out what species are in extant animal land, is about actually or potentially interbreeding natural populations, which are reproductively isolated, has nothing to do with solidifying heterosexuality's starring role in species debates. Because what it is actually trying to get to a definition that is scientifically useful so that we can do phylogenetic analysis and understand who is more closely related to whom. This movement of okay, go. I can't.
Yeah, I know you're about to boil over here.
I'm gonna sound like a teenage girl here, but I can't even.
Yeah.
I can't fucking even at this point, and I haven't even gotten to the next one yet.
It's even worse than that, right?
this is the theme for today.
It's the theme. It's even worse than that. Okay,
God.
The idea that what is being centered is heterosexuality in species definitions. No, heterosexuality is central to reproduction. That's what happened here, right? The idea that there are species, it doesn't matter where you fall out on transactivism, you don't have species without reproduction, which does require a certain amount of heterosexuality.
Some species are asexual.
Well,
okay. Some species are asexual.
Fair enough.
And some fungus have many, many mating types, etc., etc., etc. Within animals.
Yes.
Within animals, which is to say, for at least the last 500 million years, which is actually smaller than animals, within vertebrates. So probably for 1 to 2 billion years, we are within a lineage that has binary sexes and reproduce by putting one of each together. Okay? Within vertebrates, we can say for sure that is uninterrupted in our lineage, that there has never been a moment in our lineage since we've been vertebrates that our lineage has opted for asexuality and then gone back. Or more than 2. Never more than 2 in our lineage. Nope, didn't happen, not a possibility, sorry. I don't care if you think you're a fungus, you're not.
Yeah, so, all right, this journal,
the Transgender Studies Quarterly, yes?
Transgender Studies Quarterly.
Of which Paisley Carraw, who has a starring role in the journal Nature this week, is a founding co-editor, yes?
So this is a classic case of what years ago I called idea laundering,
yes.
Right? Where you want to take an idea that is nonsense and you want to give it the veneer of legitimacy that comes from putting it through the the trappings of scientific publication, right?
Yes.
So there's obviously no standard of logic here, right? There's nothing, these are just simply assertions that aren't true and don't make sense, that are being dressed up as if they have been through some sober process of evaluation, which they haven't, clearly. And what's worse, okay, it's one thing when that happens in
Gender Studies Quarterly, TSQ.
Transgender Studies Quarterly. But this is the exact moment at which this goes from the fringe nonsense journal to the premier science journal, Nature.
Right.
Right? And not only that, it's worse than that too, because the email that you received that gave you a little tour of important things taking place in Nature this week.
The email from Nature, yes.
The email from Nature juxtaposes it with an apology for having contributed in the past to illogical...
racist ramblings of people who should have known better, at least if they had been modern. So,
right, which undoubtedly there is a lot of that in Nature's history. That is a fact, an embarrassing fact of science, and the fact that science is a self-correcting process is the only thing that that rescues it. But,
and certainly we shouldn't be pretending it's not.
Right, but the point is to say, we are really sorry for screwing up the science and allowing people's prejudices to fly under a scientific banner in our journal, and then the next headline is that exactly. And it's not as if this is victimless, right? This is obviously trampling the rights of, as you point out, gay people and women.
Yes.
So,
and now children, because children are being mutilated, permanently mutilated.
Right. So the point is, at what may be, the low watermark in the last 7,500 years for the journal Nature with respect to its contributing to the discrimination against innocent people, right? It is simultaneously doing that and apologizing for it in the past needlessly, because we all understand that it has taken place, and that history of science includes an awful lot of bad science and prejudice.
It's like Nature is going like, we are so good at seeing what everyone has already pointed out, and we are really bad at seeing what a lot of people are pointing out, but the ideologues won't let us say. And to have those two things in counterpoint with one another in one of the world's two premier science journals tells us that science is in deep trouble.
Yes, it's
deep trouble.
This is a game of capture.
Yep.
And something nakedly political has idea laundered in fringe journals, and it has now captured a premier journal. And in some sense, apologizing for the past wrongs of that journal at the same time that it is championing new wrongs is the story, right?
Yep.
Nature is captured. And frankly, we've been warning about this. Do you remember the Shut Down STEM campaign?
Oh, yes.
Well, they've shut down STEM.
That was right after George Floyd died, and many of the cities in the Western world had gone into protests that had gone violent, that had become riots.
Right.
Yeah.
So
clearly the thing that you need to do at that moment is shut down STEM.
Shut down STEM. And, I don't think people understand in general how dependent they are on a, yes, admittedly flawed, but functional scientific apparatus, functional governance apparatus, functional public health system. And when these things get captured, right, yes, it's all very fascinating, but worse than that, it's extremely dangerous, right? How, for example, were there to be a global pandemic, would we navigate it if our science journals had been captured by trans activists? Right? That's where we are.
And so I got one more thing on TSQ, Transgender Studies Quarterly, but that's where we go next, in fact, a little bit. I didn't read any complete articles in Transgender Studies Quarterly. I couldn't do it. But I did read a number of abstracts, and I skimmed a number of pieces. I can't say I learned anything, but here's another article that I ran into. I'm going to have Zach put the abstract up on the screen. It's called a research article.
Oh, do you not want it up yet?
Not quite yet. It's called a research article. It's from May 2017. Every time the word trans is used, it has an asterisk after it, but for ease of reading, I'm going to elide the asterisk. I don't know what that's supposed to signify. The title of this piece is The Transness of Blackness, the Blackness of Transness. And it's by someone named Marquise Bay, or maybe it's Marquis Bay. I don't have any idea. Now you can put up the abstract and I will read it.
Can I point out something really quick?
Yes.
They even put the asterisk in the middle of transness.
Oh, yes.
That doesn't get its own.
Yes, trans asterisk dash ness.
Maybe it implies
Abstract.
sacredness.
The essay, also not this essay. The essay, the royal essay, I guess. The essay thinks radically differently about the concepts of black and trans. Trans and black thus denote poetic, para-ontological forces that are only tangentially and ultimately arbitrarily related to bodies said to be black or transgender. That is to say, they are differently inflected names for an anoriginal lawlessness that marks an escape from confinement and a besidedness to ontology. Manifesting in the modern world differently as race and gender fugitivity, black and trans, though pointed at by bodies that identify as black or trans, precede and provide the foundational condition for those fugitive identificatory demarcations. The author seeks to demonstrate the ways in which trans is black and black is trans. In what ways and to what extent is there a blackness present within transness, and vice versa? What is the effect of these analytics? This essay hopes to address these questions, but also leave them suspended in black-trans liminality.
It's good. It's good. And it's like, a dare.
Oh, it's so
like
good.
They're daring you to point out that is not, it doesn't actually even mean anything. It just, it is at best bad poetry. It's Vogon poetry.
It's Vogon poetry. I know it makes me want to jump out of an airlock when I read this. But my favorite sentence, I think, in this is, trans and black are differently inflected names for an anoriginal lawlessness that marks an escape from confinement and a besidedness to ontology.
Well, I actually kind of agree with that. I don't think it means anything, but I agree with its meaninglessness.
Oh my God. So, the co-founding editor of this journal, of the journal in which this was published, and no, the co-founding editor of a journal is not responsible for everything that is published in it, whereas that line about Meyer and about the biological species concept was in the opening volume, the opening issue. So I do think that Paisley Carraw can be held responsible for that. Maybe he can't be responsible for this, but frankly, I would hold Paisley Carraw responsible for the whole thing, because for what reason, Nature, did you give this person with negative scientific credibility a giant platform in your esteemed, but not for very much longer, publication?